Hi guys, it's Eleanor and welcome to my July wrap-up video. Excuse the hat, my hair's having a bad day, so you know. Anyway, so I read a number of books, and this is, not quite all of them, in July, so I thought we'd start. And the first thing I did in the month is finish reading O Frabjous Day by Lewis Carroll. So this is one of these little penguin little black classics, and it's poetry. It's Lewis Carroll's nonsense poetry, which I really quite like his nonsense poetry. I think it's quite funny, and occasionally it has something, very significant to say, but hidden in the disguise of, humour. And it's, of course, it's got, my favourites are probably the ones that we all know, like Jabberwocky and the Walrus and the Carpenter, stuff from his Alice series. So, yeah, that's what I started the month by finishing. Following up on that, I listened to another Tamora PS audiobook, Triss's book, which my hard copy edition is The Power in the Storm. I actually prefer these titles rather than Sandry's book and Triss's book. But yeah, so I basically reread on audio The Power of the Storm by Tamora PS, which is the second one in the Circle of Magic quartet. And again, it's one of my favourite ones in the Ambelin universe, probably because it's one of the ones I read most as a teenager. So yeah, in this one, the four friends that make up the Circle of Magic are starting to learn about their powers, and there's a disaster looming. They gain new powers, and Triss, this is mostly, it's from all of their point of view, but mostly from Triss's point of view, and there are pirates, and yeah, I really like it. So there was that. Then towards, I think it was the second week of the month, it was NAIDOC week here in Australia, and while I didn't read this book, The Interrogation of a Shayla Wolf by Ambelin and Kwaymullina, I read the book 2 and book 3 in this series, which I don't currently have because they were library books, so they've gone back. But yeah, so this is the Tribe series by Ambelin Kwaymullina. She's an Indigenous Australian author, and the Tribe series is a YA series, and it's set after an environmental cataclysm where the world is now living under a number of new rules to try and avoid ever having such a thing happen again. And there are people that have powers. They are called illegals because under the citizenship accords, they are illegal. They're not supposed to exist, and they're supposed to live in detention camps. But a Shayla Wolf and her friends, they have escaped, and they live in the forest, living according to nature. And so the second book is The Disappearance of Ember, and the third book is The Foretellings of Georgie Spider. So I read both of those. I did a little review of the whole series during NAIDOC week, so if you check out my channel you can find that. But I really love these. These are amazing. I've been talking about them for like a month and recommending them to everybody because Indigenous Australian author needs to get out there. People, read this. Seriously. Ambelin Kwaymullina. And after that, I also read another Asterix comics, digital Asterix comics, which was Asterix and the Picts. Not my favourite. I picked it up because I think it's one of the more recent Asterix comics, and it deals with the Picts, who are like the Scottish tribes. But yeah, it wasn't quite as funny as the old ones that I'm used to, so I guess it was probably, I can't remember what I rated it, probably 3 stars, which is sort of, middle of the road, enjoyable, but not as good as it could have been. And after that, I got sick, and I wanted something easy to read. So on my to-be-read shelf, I had this, which is The Adventures of Milly-Molly-Mandy, which is a 4 books in one. I didn't realise what the light was doing. I grew up with one edition of Milly-Molly-Mandy, which was the first book in this collection, the Milly-Molly-Mandy stories. And they're short, and they're really simplistic, and they're very old-fashioned, but it appeals to the sort of old-fashioned British part of my heart. sort of like Enid Blyton does. So the Adventures of Milly-Molly-Mandy. Milly-Molly-Mandy is a little girl who lives in what I assume is probably pre-war. I think it's pre-war England, in the countryside. Anyway, and she has various adventures involving things like blackberry picking and helping her mother and going on adventures to the next town and, you know, riding bicycles. And it's all very simple, but, you know, it was just what I needed while I was sick, and I really enjoyed it. Like, they're simple, but they're adorable. And so, yeah, The Adventures of Milly-Molly-Mandy, that's by Joyce Lankester Brisley. So that was, again, something I read this month. And then I picked up, finally, ODY-C, the Volume 1, Off to Far Ithaca by Matt Fraction and Christian Ward. I was really looking forward to this, and I enjoyed it, but I think reading Volume 1 taught me that I actually don't know enough about the original story, The Odyssey by Homer, which is why I've now picked up a copy. So I'm hoping this will make more sense, and like I said, it was enjoyable, but I'm hoping that as I learn more about the myth, then it will become better. I mean, the artwork is still gorgeous, if not somewhat confronting. And I can admire it for what it's doing with, you know, the gender flipping and everything. But yeah, I think I need to understand more of the original myth before this will be at its best for me. But still an enjoyable read. And then, yes, we had a release date for Imprudence by Gail Carriger, which is the second in the Custard Protocol novels, which is the third series set in her steampunk supernatural universe. So this is the second book about Prudence and her friends who are sort of jaunting about the world on their dirigible, the Spotted Custard. In this case, they've come back to London after their initial adventure, and they discover things aren't quite what they seem with with Prudence's family. So there's a whole bunch of emotional stuff to deal with, and then they kind of end up in an awkward position and have to go on another adventure to Egypt this time. So it was shenanigans and pretty frocks and so much food and characters from the Parasol Protectorate showing up and, you know, flying battles and family shenanigans and romantic shenanigans, and shenanigans is really the right word for this series. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. I devoured it in like 2 days, so one evening, and then read the rest of it the next morning. So yeah, Gail Carriger's Imprudence, I finished that. And then to wind up the month, I read Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I initially had like the first half of the book in a PDF form for the Hugo reading, but I enjoyed it so much that I decided to pick up a physical copy, and isn't this cover gorgeous? I absolutely love it. And so I finished it on the last day of the month, and it did actually get my Hugo vote for the novel category. And so this is a fantasy novel that's set in an imaginary country, Polnia, and it's basically every 10 years the wizard who sort of lives near the village and keeps back the forest, the wood, which is an evil entity. He picks a girl from the surrounding villages to come and serve him, and no one really knows what happens. And everyone's expecting one particular girl to get selected this time, but instead our main character, Agnieszka, she gets selected, and it turns out that she's actually a witch, and she didn't know that. And so it's this adventure of her learning about her magic and fighting against the wood and figuring out how to defeat the wood, and save the people that she loves. And really that's the way she acts. She acts to save the people that she loves. And I really, really enjoyed this. So that was the last book that I read in July. Yeah, so that was actually a decent amount. I think I read, it was 9 things in July. So I'm quite pleased with that. And yeah, I'll see you again soon. Bye.